and welcome to another episode of The Dark Place. This is the podcast and the show that takes you on a journey through the most perplexing and chilling cases from around the world. I'm your host, Adam, and tonight we delve into one of the most disturbing cases in recent memory, the Slender Man case. Before we get into the case tonight, please go to all of our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, and TikTok, The Other People's Show. Like and subscribe. You can also go to 93.5 WAXM SoundCloud to hear episodes of The Dark Place as well. Now, the case that we're talking about tonight is the Slender Man case. And this is a case that is quite rare in the fact that this is two 12-year-old girls at the center of this case. On a seemingly normal afternoon on May 2014, in the quiet suburb of Wisconsin, two 12-year-old girls, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire, planned an innocent sleepover. Little did anyone know that this night would turn into a nightmare beyond imagination. There's a gnat in front of my face. The two girls, they were fascinated by this internet meme, Slender Man. A tall, faceless figure that had gained popularity as an urban myth. One that stories were told to try to scare children. But that once simple, scary internet story took a sinister turn, and the legend of Slender Man became all too real. On May 31st, Morgan and Anissa led their classmate Peyton into the woods to play a game of hide and seek. But this was no game. It was a cold and calculated plan to murder their friend in the name of Slender Man. Now, Peyton, she was stabbed multiple times, and her life hung by a thread. Her life was spared only by millimeters. After the attack and left for dead, she managed to crawl out of the woods, where she was found by a passerby cyclist. Her survival was nothing short of a miracle. So, to really understand Slender Man, we're going to have to explore the backgrounds of Morgan and Anissa just a little bit. What were their lives like before this fateful night? Were there warning signs where this could have been prohibited? Were there warning signs that could have been identified to stop this event from happening? We're also going to examine the dark corners of the internet, where the Slender Man myth thrived, and how this online folklore became a catalyst for real-life tragedy. What was really responsible for this action? Do the creators of Slender Man or anyone like that, do they have any, do they have any, I guess you could say, do they have any responsibility to bear for such an event? So before we dive into the case even further, let us take a moment to remember Peyton Leitner, the innocent victim of this senseless act. Her courage and resilience continue to inspire many to this very day. Like I said earlier, thank you for joining me on The Dark Place, and I'm going to be your guide, Adam, on this journey through the unsettling tale. So, like I was saying beforehand, Morgan and Anissa were more of loners. They were more caught up more in tales of the internet, living their lives through the internet, through Slender Man. But they were also one in which, Morgan had more of delusions. She was depressed, and she kind of lived inside of her own world, and she wasn't really 100% sure what was real and what wasn't real. Now, Anissa, she was not quite as disturbed, as come to find out later on, but the two of them together shared the delusions that Slender Man was real. Now, how can you think an internet meme, an internet fiction, a fan fiction, a made-up thing, how can you process or how can you think that it's a real thing, just like your mother, your father, someone you're working with, any of that? How can Slender Man be in reality to these girls? Now, when it came to, and let me check my notes here just to make sure, is that these girls were fascinated by Slender Man, and they wanted to get in the good graces of Slender Man. Slender Man you can look up Slender Man and you will see he is often dressed in a suit. He's faceless. He has long arms that can outstretch, common length of the arm. In some drawings or fan fiction, he has tentacles. He often lures children out into the woods and kills them. Now, Morgan and Anissa wanted to become a proxy of Slender Man. They wanted to become like Slender Man. And in order for them to do that, Morgan came up with the idea, let's be proxies for Slender Man. Anissa is like, how do we do this? Morgan says, we're going to have to kill Peyton. That's where the plan began. They were trying basically to offer up Peyton to Slender Man to show that they're good enough to go into this mansion that Slender Man had in the woods, and so he would spare the killing of their family. This was all in Morgan and Anissa's head. Reports, and you can find later interviews about this same thing, is that they tell the police in the interrogation room exactly what they're thinking, exactly why they do this. So they take Peyton out into the woods. It's a girl's sleepover. They take her out into the woods under the guise of playing hide and seek. They tell Peyton to lay down on the ground, close her eyes, start counting to 10, and as she's starting to do that, Morgan and Anissa begin stabbing her in the torso, in the side, in the leg. 19 times they stab her within millimeters of her heart. They run off, leave her for dead. As she's crying, she's in agony. Peyton is saying, I trusted you. I hate you. I trusted you all. Peyton, a 12-year-old girl, was being stabbed to death by her best friends all in the name or for the Slender Man. Now, as the girls, Morgan and Anissa, begin to walking away, they have the kitchen knives that they used to stab Peyton in a plastic, from what I can understand, almost like a Ziploc bag as they're walking. They're later picked up 5 hours later, questioned after Peyton crawls as she's bleeding, as she's dying. She crawls and pulls herself to I-95, where a cyclist happens to see her and calls 911. The phone call can be watched or listened to on YouTube, so I do think that you should go check out the 911 call. When Morgan and Anissa are picked up, they're questioned because the authorities aren't expecting 12-year-old girls to be the perpetrators of this horrific crime, but they are. Blood's on their shirt, blood's on their hands. They're interrogated. Both girls in the interrogation room tell a very similar story. We did this because we wanted to basically impress the Slender Man. We basically did this not because we dislike Peyton, not because we had any ill will toward her, but all because of Slender Man. Now, as the girls are being interrogated, which their parents weren't present when interrogated. This takes place in Wisconsin, and the laws regarding, murderers of a young age can be tried as an adult if severe, such as this case. But after conclusions, neither girl was able to stand trial. Their mental health kept them from being able to distinguish between what was in reality and what was fiction, what was false. Now, Morgan, while growing up, experienced many hallucinations. She saw ghosts, colors melting down the walls, imaginary friends, one named Maggie and the other named Sev. One hallucination that often occurred was a man Morgan named It, whose body was the color of smoke and ink, and stood behind her in mirrors or shifted around the corners, similar to that of Slender Man. Once she was picked up, the officer saw that she often talked to herself. She pretended that she was a cat, and she kept pet ants in her holding cell. It was also noted that she saw unicorns as well as had continual conversations with Slender Man and other fictional characters. Now, Morgan was charged with attempted first-degree murder, or homicide, a Class A felony, and Wire was charged with attempted second-degree homicide. They both were going to be tried as adults since the stabbings were severe. In 2017, Weir pleaded to being party to the attempted second-degree homicide. The jury then found her not guilty by mental disease or defect. She accepted a plea deal under which she would not go to trial, and she was sentenced 25 years to life. she was given a maximum sentence of 40 years to life in a mental psychiatric institute. Now, Wire, Anisha Wire, she also pleaded to the second degree homicide charge, and she was sentenced 25 years in a mental facility. Now, there was an appeal in 2020 that Morgan, you can appeal every so often. Morgan was going to appeal, and she did. There's been another appeal in 2021, but the Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal. So this was a folly ado. I'm not pronouncing that the way it should be pronounced, but that means death by two, which is actually the new Joker 2 title. Now, there was several. There's a couple of movies inspired by the Slender Man stabbing, titled Mercy Black, and then there's another by Blumhouse Productions, and it's a story about two girls that are pre-schizophrenic who attempt to murder their friend. So, a lot of news media, when this was going around, I kind of remember a little bit about it. I didn't know 100% about Slender Man. This brought it more to the forefront. But should these girls have been put away in a prison, in a maximum security prison? That became the issue. Peyton did survive. She did survive her wounds, and she's living a healthy and happy life now. She was a victim of a stabbing that was millimeters away from her life, was taken. Was it taken, or was it attempted taken by these girls' malicious, murderous urges, or due to the fact that they had very serious mental health conditions? That has been up for debate almost the entire time that this case has been going on. And that still seems to be a big part of the debate as well. Did these girls deserve to get more than they did? They are going to be in a mental health facility for a long time. But Anise Wire requested her release if she's to become a productive member of society. So it looks like there was some updating to this. Is one of the teens, Anissa Wire, is to be released from, actually she was to be released after she was sentenced to 25 years. The girls were young. They were isolated. Going back and looking through, we discussed earlier, could this have been prevented? Were there things in place that just signs that weren't seen? Now, after doing some investigations, the officers went and they had a search warrant for both the girls' houses. They found a lot of disturbing artwork that would point to mental illness, and that something was wrong. Would anybody would have predicted that these girls would have tried to kill Peyton? No, I don't think so. There's not any information to conclude that would be, that would be something that, if these steps were taken, this could have been prevented. Obviously, often things like this could be prevented. You could also ask the questions: where were the girls' parents when they're out at nighttime doing this? Didn't Morgan or Anis's parents check in on the room, the drawings? You know, there a lot of disturbing artwork and drawings and writings throughout the room. Why didn't the parents know about any of this? I can't say. But it seems like, should they have known anything? Who's to say? Peyton later on, after being interviewed years later, said that the Morgan and Anissa were really obsessed with Slender Man and the fan fiction of that. Also, it goes to think that, there was no signs at school that would have shown that this would have happened. There was no reports that anything that I found that they were violent at school. They may have included Slender Man in some of their assignments, but nothing to the extent that would make anyone think that they would try to sacrifice their friend, Peyton, for this Slender Man. Very odd in a way. Well, not in a way, but it really is. It really is. So, what's the conclusion to this case? This is one of the rare cases that we've delved into where the victim actually did survive. Not saying that this had a happy ending by any stretch of the imagination, because there's never a happy ending when lives are on the line and lives are ruined in one way or another. Now, who's to say if Morgan or Anise would have carried this plan out alone? They had spoke about this, it was planned in around 6 months in advance in various stages. In the notebooks that they had, they have weapons that they could use, and it's detailed a little bit about how they're going to go about doing this, and that Peyton had to go. She had to be the one. But it also raises the question of, what are the signs to look for? What are, delusions? Children, 12-year-olds and younger, and they have an imagination, a vivid imagination. When would it become alarming when it goes from having a vivid imagination to this is dangerous, siding on delusional things, delusions that aren't there, talking to people that aren't there. In Morgan's interrogation, she said that her and Anise saw Slender Man out of the corner of their eye, at least on one or two occasions, that there was rustling in the leaves when no one was there. They truly did 100% believe that Slender Man was real. They truly believed that if they didn't commit this horrendous crime and murder, that they were in jeopardy and that they wouldn't be perceived as good enough and to become a proxy for Slender Man. Peyton survived. She's thriving. She is about to go to college now. Anissa Weir, I think she has recently been let out. Morgan is still serving her time in Wisconsin. And I just wonder how this will play out. It seems that Peyton has come to terms and has been able to deal with this. She's got her life together, and she is not only a survivor, but she's a fighter. She's a fighter. I do hope that the other two girls are getting the help that they need, or they could possibly lead a more productive life in society. Because both girls now, are 21 years old. I guess they're all 21 years old now, 2021. So in conclusion tonight, in the case of the Slender Man stabbing, we have to realize and come to terms that evil is not always the easiest to detect. That it isn't always cut and dry and simple. This has been one of the few cases that we've delved into where there has been more of a conclusion that's not quite as dark as some that we've had. But we still are on this dark journey through these true crime chronicles, these deeply unsettling tales. Thank you for embarking tonight on this 30-minute journey of the Slender Man murder. It's left its mark on society and the nation. And it makes us want to look closer and deeper to try to get at the heart of the matter. Thank you. Until next time, I'm Adam with The Dark Place. Have a good night.